This year's E3 was an amazing show on so many levels, and even now we're still trying to fully digest and comprehend everything we saw during what was a week just jam-packed full of delicious content. There were so many amazing games that featured, either in a direct capacity or indirect, and that's before we even think about the ones that just didn't appear but are still very much front of mind. And it's because of this and the sheer depth of what's coming up that we really just wanted to talk about some of the ones we can't wait to learn more about and then play when they eventually release. But I know what you're thinking. Daryl, this is a channel about Final Fantasy. Should you really be thinking and talking about anything else? Especially with so much to look forward to in that regard. And to that I would say, it is true, we do indeed have a primary focus around Final Fantasy. But it doesn't mean we don't have interests outside of that rather glorious franchise. And as we've just produced an absolute boatload of content relating to the Final Fantasy VII Remake, we figured you guys would forgive us this once for deviating a little bit, as it feels like the perfect time to talk about some of the other video games Lauren and I are desperately excited to play in the not so distant future. To make sure that things are at least a little bit relevant though, we will be keeping this focused around RPGs, 7 of them to be precise. And to kick things off, we are going to start with a game that has the potential to be absolutely huge when it launches on the Nintendo Switch later this year, Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, if we're being brutally honest, Lauren and I haven't been actively following the Pokemon franchise for a while now, but there are 2 things that have kept us engaged: rewatching the glorious Indigo League on Netflix with our eldest daughter, and playing Pokemon Go, which released on mobile devices back in 2016. Both have been a bit sporadic in terms of keeping our engagement levels up, but Lauren's most recent addictive spree on Pokemon Go happened only a few months ago, and along with the release of Detective Pikachu, it's got her rather excited for the future. And that's why Pokemon Sword and Shield has come at the perfect time for us to become fully invested in the build-up until its release on the 15th of November. One of the most interesting aspects for us is that Sword and Shield will be arriving on the Nintendo Switch, which, following on from Pokemon Let's Go's release at the end of last year, marks only the second time a main series title has appeared on a home console. So outside of it being another opportunity for us to return to the series and hunt for more Pokemon and collect more gym badges, it also means the game will be able to offer so much more thanks to the extra horsepower Game Freak will be able to leverage. In an immediate sense, it appears as though this will be applied to the graphics, with a focus on the Galar region, which looks absolutely gorgeous. And I'm thrilled, for obvious reasons, that they've decided to use the UK as inspiration for this new setting. Acting as something of a throwback to earlier games, this new region should have a more open world setting, which given the landscapes it will feature, should make exploration rather fun. Outside of this, there's of course the new characters we will be introduced to, and the 3 new starter Pokemon, Grookey, Scorbunny and Sobble. Getting accustomed to how they work within the game's established mechanics will be crucial to starting off on the right foot. But let's be honest, the main area of curiosity for both of us will be around Dynamaxing Wailords. Next up, we have Elden Ring, which up until a few days before E3, we did not even know was a thing. But after it was unfortunately leaked via a security flaw on the Bandai Namco website, our interest in Elden Ring was pretty much immediate. Both Lauren and I have been avid followers of the Souls franchise ever since the release of Demon's Souls way back in 2010, and it means we always have a close eye on what the team at From Software are planning next, especially with Dark Souls 3 representing the final chapter in that franchise, for now at least. It meant that when we heard about Elden Ring, we were drawn in on that basis alone, but when we learnt more, our anticipation only heightened. The game will again be directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, but the main surprise is that he will be collaborating with the creator of Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin. Having been a huge fan of his works, Miyazaki's executive business director, Eiichi Nakajima, decided to reach out and ask Mr. Martin for a meeting. They assumed the request would be turned down or just flat out ignored, but they heard back and were able to set something up, and after spending time together, they each felt a collaboration would work, and Mr. Martin started working on the overarching mythos of Elden Ring. It's certainly an unlikely combination, but given the success of both creators in their respective areas, it's going to be fascinating to see what their combined creative brains can come up with. They've apparently been working on it for around 3 years already, and initial rumours talk of a game where you will be tasked with killing the rulers of multiple kingdoms so as to unlock the use of their supernatural powers and abilities. We didn't get to see too much during the Microsoft press conference, but they did publish an interview with Miyazaki on the Xbox Wire news service. I will make sure to throw a link in the description below if you're interested in reading more, because it's quite an extensive interview. Nonetheless, we expect to start hearing big things ahead of its release on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One and PC. And that brings us nicely onto Nioh 2. After a solid launch which saw 1 million copies shipped within its first 2 weeks on sale, the original Nioh managed to carry on growing through word of mouth and now sits at over 2.5 million copies sold worldwide. For a company like Koei Tecmo, that is huge, especially when you consider that Nioh was first announced as a PlayStation 3 exclusive over a decade ago, back at E3 2005, with a slated initial release as 2006. Such was its success though, that Koei Tecmo and Sony decided the world they created warranted more expansion, and so they unveiled Nioh 2 during the Sony press conference at E3 2018. But after the announcement, we heard next to nothing for quite some time. When Sony then revealed that they wouldn't be attending this year's E3, the assumption was that the silence would continue, but buzz for Nioh 2 has picked up in a significant manner even still, as Team Ninja did a pretty big reveal of the gameplay a few weeks before E3, with a closed alpha also being made available to lucky participants and journalists, allowing them a chance to go hands-on with the game. Even in these early stages, Digital Foundry were impressed by the visuals, commenting on the solid 60 frames per second smooth gameplay experience and improved lighting effects. General feedback from the community has also been positive so far, as noted by this extensive comment from Twitch in Stereo on Reddit. At this stage, the best word to describe Nioh 2 probably seems to be refined, but based on how solid and unique the original was, that's no bad thing. That's not to say the development team are resting on their laurels though, as they've added plenty of new mechanics to try and make Nioh 2 a much richer experience, and one example of this is the yokai shift mechanic, which will allow you to transform into a yokai by being possessed by your guardian spirit. Here's hoping that when Nioh 2 releases, it delivers another strong experience and surpasses the original in every way. Another game we're keeping a very close eye on is Cyberpunk 2077 from CD Projekt Red. Ever since its announcement back in 2012, there has been a significant amount of interest around this particular project, and this has only heightened following how much of a breakout success The Witcher 3 ended up being. As a franchise, The Witcher had been steadily growing in interest following the release of the first iteration back in 2007, and by 2014, combined sales of The Witcher and its sequel had reached 8 million. But the franchise now sits at 40 million copies sold worldwide, thanks to the hugely successful release of The Witcher 3. Such success has raised expectation around Cyberpunk 2077 in a rather significant manner, but the developers have reveled in the spotlight so far, and this was highlighted by their showing during the Microsoft press conference, as they shocked an adoring audience by revealing a new character called Johnny Silverhand, who will be played by the man of the moment, Keanu Reeves. In an age of constant leaks, it was a genuine shock. Somehow, they managed to keep it under wraps, and it must have been so exhilarating for the developers to be able to keep it secret and deliver it to such rapturous applause. The fact that his character is so integral to the story, with Johnny Silverhand reportedly only having less dialogue than the main character, is also extremely cool. Outside of just the general hype, Lauren and I have always been drawn into the cyberpunk genre. Movies like Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell and The Matrix are some of our all-time favourites, and we've also enjoyed games like Flashback, Deus Ex and Syndicate Wars over the years. Hell, even Final Fantasy VII has been a huge inspiration to us, and that is very much cyberpunk. At this point, it's pretty difficult to ignore the hype surrounding this game. Everything just seems to be aligning very nicely, whether it's the marketing efforts, which included this very cool Easter egg gamers found in the collector's edition unboxing video, the visual style, or the gameplay, which was given a massive focus over the past 12 months. CD Projekt Red are preparing something big, and we're just happy to be along for the ride. At this point, April 2020 cannot come soon enough, but fortunately, we will have the Final Fantasy VII Remake to keep us busy, as it launches 5 weeks before Cyberpunk 2077. The start of next year is going to be a good time to be a gamer. Now, even though we do know quite a lot about Cyberpunk 2077 at this point, we know very little about the next game on our list, Starfield. This is a game that's rather intrigued both of us following its announcement at E3 2018, but for different reasons. Lauren has been completely absorbed into the world of Bethesda over the past few years thanks to Skyrim, Fallout 4, and more recently, Fallout 76. I've also played my fair share of Bethesda's recent efforts, but what's made us hone in on this particular game is that it represents something new for Bethesda game studios. For the past 25 years, they've continued to build upon existing franchises, but Starfield will be a brand new experience, not connected to Elder Scrolls or Fallout. Its announcement was rather ambiguous. As has become the norm, Bethesda just showed off a short teaser trailer that alluded to it being a new RPG that would have a science fiction focus. They did also tease the Elder Scrolls 6 at the same time, and there's naturally a lot of interest around what they'll do with that particular franchise, but right now the focus is very much on Starfield internally. Todd Howard spoke just before E3 about this, but even though the game is now playable according to Howard, they chose to skip E3 2019, and it's unlikely they will be showing off anything about the game this year. And that's because they want to follow up on the model they proposed with Fallout 4, where they just dropped a huge bombshell by revealing the game out of the blue and then shipping it to the general public a few months later. And next year may well be when they do the same for Starfield. In the interim, even though it's probably not going to be an RPG, Ghostwire from the team at Tango Gameworks also looks like it could be rather intriguing. But that's just based on the enthusiasm of their presentation, a general description of the game, and a classic pre-rendered trailer. Interest around Starfield and Bethesda games in general does lead us nicely onto our next game though, The Outer Worlds. With Lauren being so obsessed with Fallout, it's only natural that her interest has been piqued by the latest game from Obsidian Entertainment, The Outer Worlds. It's been in development since 2016, and its creative direction is being led by Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky, two of the minds who created Fallout in the first place over 2 decades ago. With them reunited for this project, it's going to be fascinating to see what this new venture brings for them. So far, everything seems very much aligned with what we want to see, as there's a heavy focus on narrative and exploration, and even though it's very science fiction, with a story based around mega corporations who are terraforming alien planets, there's still a very Fallout-esque vibe to everything. And based on what we saw during the recent Microsoft press conference, this story has been mixed in with some fun, unique first-person gameplay mechanics that will see a whole host of melee weapons and firearms employed, like a shrink ray that, well, shrinks enemies. You'll also be able to add elemental damage to increase combat efficiency, but should you wish, you can also use stealth and persuasion to just avoid combat situations in general. With Obsidian now working under the Xbox Game Studios banner, and with Microsoft giving it first billings during their press conference, they clearly have high expectations ahead of its release later this year on the 25th of October, and we do too. Just as a note though, even though Microsoft do own Obsidian, The Outer Worlds is still going to release on the PlayStation 4 as well as Xbox One and PC, although you won't be able to purchase it on Steam for at least a year after its launch. And with a focus on a few Western RPGs, that brings us nicely onto our final game, the latest iteration in an iconic Japanese RPG franchise, Shenmue III. Now, E3 2015 was obviously a huge event for fans of the Final Fantasy franchise, as not only did they announce World of Final Fantasy, a wonderful little tribute game, Square Enix also shocked the gaming world during the Sony press conference as they revealed that they were indeed working on the Final Fantasy VII Remake. But within that now famed press conference, there was another game announced that also had many fans around the world getting rather giddy with excitement, Shenmue III. As someone who had played the original 2 games on the Dreamcast, I had become rather invested in the world that Yu Suzuki had created. But given the poor commercial performance, and with there being no interest on Sega's part to tell the rest of the Shenmue epic, it kind of felt like the Final Fantasy VII Remake. There were rumours that would persist throughout the years, and there was of course plenty of fan demand, but nobody felt like such a thing would ever exist. Until it did. Sure, it has been a bit of a bumpy ride so far since its announcement, with the most recent one relating to their support of the Epic Games Store, and it's a shame that it's been handled how it has. There's also been consistent complaints about the game's graphical quality whenever new trailers have been released, but just as the graphics did not hinder my enjoyment when I replayed Shenmue 1 and 2 via the HD collection last year, I'm sure the cosmetics won't stunt my enjoyment of what should be another fine chapter in the epic story of Ryo Hazuki. From my perspective, as long as the story is well told and the gameplay mechanics are solid, it should turn out to be a great game. I mean, sure, that's definitely an oversimplification of my expectations, but I genuinely just cannot wait to see what they come up with. And I think that's the case with a lot of the other RPGs out there right now. We've covered 7 here in some detail, but there are plenty of others that should be releasing within the next 6 to 18 months that we've also got our eyes on, such as Darksiders Genesis, a new Diablo-inspired spin-off that's being developed by Airship Syndicate and is due to release later this year. The Surge 2, a follow-up to a rather decent action RPG from 2017 that I'm actually playing right now. This sequel is set to continue on with a rather brutal combat on the 24th of September. Baldur's Gate 3, the first major installment into the venerable RPG franchise for almost 20 years. This was announced at E3 for the PC and Google's new Stadia console. Tales of Arise, that was also revealed during the rather unfortunate Bandai Namco leak before then being shown during the Microsoft press conference. Being the first Tales game developed with current generation consoles in mind, it looks to be something of a true rebirth for the franchise, with rather stunning visuals. Code Vein, a rather brutal looking action RPG that was announced back in 2017 and should release on the 27th of September. Fire Emblem Three Houses, which acts as the first main series Fire Emblem game to appear on a home console for over a decade, and it's also being co-developed by Koei Tecmo, which should add an interesting twist. And lastly, Town, a rather intriguing new game from Game Freak, who are best known for working on the Pokemon franchise. They are looking to branch out and create something new, with a story focused on villagers who are trying to repel giant monsters that have appeared and are wreaking havoc. Oh, and yeah, we probably should mention the Final Fantasy VII Remake as well, right? That's a pretty big RPG that's coming out within the next 12 months. And if you're interested in learning more about that, then we would definitely recommend that you check out some of our supporting content that we've published, as Square Enix revealed an absolute shed load of information during E3 2019, and it's got a rather large portion of the fanbase in an absolute frenzy, including us. But yeah, they were RPGs we cannot wait to play over the next 6 to 18 months, and with Gamescom and the Tokyo Game Show to look forward to in the coming months, we should be set to learn plenty more about these games. But which are the ones you're most looking forward to seeing and playing? Let us know in the comments below, and of course, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that like button. If you're still here, listening to me waffle on, then I would like to extend a very warm thank you to all of you. Your support is invaluable to us, and it's helped us to get where we are today. We've just passed an incredible milestone, 100,000 subscribers, and I cannot tell you how humbled Lauren and I are that there are so many of you who are interested in the content we create. As I said in the community post just after we passed the milestone, it's incredibly inspiring to us, but also kinda scary. We also wouldn't be where we are today without the wonderful community we have on Discord and Facebook, and on Patreon and via YouTube memberships. They are constantly pushing us to create the best content we possibly can, and we are indebted to them. If you're interested in joining any of these communities, then please do check out the links in the description below. We're a lovely bunch, I swear. Alright guys, this is Daryl and Lauren signing out. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you again real soon for more Final Fantasy goodness.